Hello and welcome, and thank you guys for joining us for the Horizon League Building Your Brand panel. We hope this will be an informative conversation for student athletes to learn the importance of personal branding, what it is like running a branding for a professional team, as well as branding for a collegiate sports conference. We also want to help student athletes to look ahead, as many are interested in making sports a part of their professional futures. And with that, my name is Am Paris, and I'll be serving as your host and moderator for tonight. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm the president of Am Paris Productions. We're a marketing media company and managing company. And so I work with a lot of professional athletes and students, professional athletes in football, basketball, as well as music and entertainment people. And, basically my background is tied into branding, which whether if you are talking about branding as a high school student, a college student, or a professional athlete, it kind of all ties into the same thing. And so I have a distinguished panelist tonight to help us break down branding on every level of what we're talking about. And so the first panelist I'm going to bring to the table is a female. We're going to bring in Ms. Lauren Walsh from LW Branding. Give it up for Lauren.
Thank you so
Hey,
much.
Lauren, how are you? Hey.
Great to see you. Thanks for the introduction. I love it. And the energy.
Hey, so I just want you, Lauren, to tell them a little bit about yourself, tell them a little bit about your company. And so hopefully, I know your purpose is you really are big in motivating women. So I'm gonna let Lauren tell you a little bit more about herself.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm the founder and president of LW Branding, which is a boutique branding and marketing agency that specializes in working with professional athletes and thought leaders. And what we focus on doing for our clients is helping them really increase their exposure as much as possible and then allow that to develop into different sources of revenue. So at the end of the day, it's all about monetization. I'm always trying to figure out how can I leverage one of my clients' personal brands to monetize and create different streams of revenue for them. And of course, for athletes, that means revenue in terms of marketing and endorsement deals, different partnerships off the court or off the field. As Amp stated, I'm also super interested and very, very passionate about empowering the next generation of women who want to work in sports. I actually founded a group called the Empowering Women in Sports Mentorship Program. It's a completely free mentorship program that gives women access to myself, my network, all the different resources that I've gained over the last 11 years of working in this industry and 6 years of running my own agency. And the big reason behind that is because when I got started, I didn't have anyone reach their hand out. There weren't as many women working in the industry as there is now. And I've had to just kind of do a lot through trial and error. So my goal is to help women cut down on the time that it takes to get from point A to point B and kind of help them navigate this world of sports, which, as we all know, and we see through this panel, still remains a very much a male-dominated industry.
Wow. Well, thank you, Lauren, for that. Our next panelist is he's in this for professional soccer. He is run branding for the professional soccer team up there in cheese country. What about that, Jason? Give it up for my friend Jason Klein from Forward Madison FC.
Yeah, thank you, Amp. Perfect. Like you said, my name's Jason Klein, and you might notice that I'm sort of on the younger side for our panelists here. But there's a point to that. I'm going to be closer to the student athletes who we're talking to in age. So maybe you'll be able to relate to some of the things I say. I graduated from college in 2019 and started working here with Forward Madison FC, which is a professional soccer team. I work in communications, so I'm the basically I do digital marketing. So we're a team in the third division of American soccer. It's got some parallels to the Horizon League because it's not the very, very top flight, but it's still a really high standard of sports. So the way that I work is interesting because a lot of it is based on developing community. We have to find different solutions for the problems of marketing a sports team because we don't have the typical resources of someone like, say, an NFL team or even a Major League Soccer team. So a lot of the stuff I do revolves around thinking in innovative ways to bring in new fans and supporters.
Thank you, Jason. I appreciate that. And last but not least, this guy can't miss. Representing the Horizon League, I want y'all to make some noise for Cam Fuller, Horizon League Assistant Commissioner. Welcome, Cam.
Thank you, Amp. Great to be here. Lauren, Jason, great to join you for this panel, which I'm really excited about. I think our student athletes are really going to benefit from hearing from some experts. When we say experts, I think that term's loosely since I somehow got on this panel, but I am excited to be here. My background from the Horizon League standpoint is this is my 8th year with the Horizon League. My primary responsibility is I have oversight of our external side of things. So that's our marketing, branding, sponsorship, communications department. And then I also oversee our men's and women's basketball tournament, as well as our baseball regular season and tournament play. So just by way of background, I'm a former Horizon League student athlete. Like you all that are listening to this panel, I was a golfer at the University of Wisconsin, Green Bay. And later on in my career, got my master's degree from the University of Indianapolis. So by way of background, I've been through some of the trials and tribulations of some of the student athletes here, and certainly can relate as it relates to what you all may have been going through. But I don't think this year anybody has gone through this. So you all are commendable to be where you are right now, just given the difficulty this last year has been. From just a background standpoint, I grew up in kind of a sports family, and as I was approaching my senior year of college, it became really clear to me that sports was something that I wanted to kind of continue to pursue. I knew I probably wasn't good enough to continue playing golf, maybe good enough to play on the weekends, but not play for a career. So I was fortunate to start with the Horizon League. And then certainly pertinent for this discussion is my oversight of our external areas. So that's our messaging strategy, really trying to develop a strategy that highlights our 3,000 student athletes and our 19 championships. So I'm excited to talk about that this evening and talk about just general branding. So Amp, excited to be here. Thank you.
Thank you guys for being here. This is so important because like when I speak to a lot of young people, especially that all student athletes feel or think that they're going to go pro in whatever respective sport that they play. But what I typically tell student athletes is you're going to go pro, but it may not be as an athlete. And that's the most important thing. So what we're here to do is just give motivation and background on how you can figure out your path to becoming that professional off the field, off the court. And you're looking at 4 professionals who really enjoy what they do in their respective career. And you know, I work with a lot of agents, and I work with a lot of general managers of professional sports. And the one thing that I've realized is everybody wants to do what we do, branding and marketing, because that's the sexy part of it when you really think about it. So that's why this panel and this conversation, and kudos to the Horizon League for putting something like this together for student athletes that are sitting in their room trying to figure out, well, what happens to me once I graduate? What is my career path going to be? So I want to be able to jump right into this. And Lauren, being the woman on the panel and representing the women, I'm going to come to you first. Why is it important for student athletes to define themselves? Why is that so? And why is that really important for student athletes to define themselves? That's really something that I think a lot of student athletes struggle with.
You know, it goes along with what happens when you get out of college and you're entering into the real world. Society tells us that we are to be known as what we do, not who we are. And so what it means to actually have a personal brand is to be known for exactly who you are. I firmly believe you don't build a personal brand, you are your brand. And so what's important is that as a student athlete, when you're still in college, you start to ask yourself the tough questions. I'll be totally honest with you. I didn't know these things when I was in college. They weren't putting on these kinds of seminars. I was a cheerleader at Purdue, and I'll tell you that when we were getting ready for the Big Ten tournament, we didn't have these kinds of things and access to these resources. And I wish someone told me in college to ask myself the tough questions that you need to do so it didn't take me as long as it did. What are those tough questions? You need to ask yourself, What is my why? Why am I getting out of bed every single morning? What am I living for? What is the legacy that I want to leave behind? By being able to answer those questions, that will help you define what your brand is. And it's so important because it's very easy to get caught up in what your title is. And right now, your title is student athlete. It's very easy to get caught up in the fact that some students and some of your peers on campus may think that you are up on a pedestal because of the fact that you are an athlete, when sometimes you really want to be known for is, hey, outside of sports, I'm actually really cool because I'm into A, B, and C, or I like these things over here. So it's important to understand that those things that make you you are the things that make you unique. And out of over these 7 billion people in this entire world, that's the thing that will always set you apart from everything else in the entire world. So I think lean into that and ask yourself some of those tough questions now to really get ahead of the game and figure out who you are, so that when you get out, whether you go into pro sports, whether as an athlete you're working in it, or you simply go pro in your professional career, that you're prepared to show up as exactly who you are, because that is what will get you the job every single day.
And that's really important, Lauren, because self-confidence is really important. I mean, a lot of times when student athletes think that they're defined by just being a student athlete, and I tell them all the time, you have to live your life topics versus issues. And being a student athlete, that's the topic. The issue is kind of, Lauren, what you just touched on. Why? Who are you? And if you're only defined by being a student athlete, you're not giving yourself a chance to be successful beyond a student athlete. Cam, I want to come to you on the next question. Considering you're at the top brass of the Horizon League, talk about how the Horizon League brands the league itself.
Yeah, good question, Amp. And this was really a process that we undertook about 6 years ago. And I think our league really was trying to figure out who we were. I mean, at the time, the league had been around for 35 years, and we've had a lot of success from a national standpoint in men's basketball and women's basketball and some of our other sports. But we really took a concerted effort to figure out kind of what sets us apart. What are those value propositions that, when you look at the other 31 conferences in Division I, what makes the Horizon League distinct? Because I think right now there's 32 Division I conferences, right? So you're trying to set yourself apart. And if you just sit there and wait, well, the reality of it is someone's going to define that brand for you. So what we've tried to do is really figure out what are those, what we kind of call our proof points, which we've really identified 5 areas that we try to pride ourselves on. And that's, one is major reach and visibility. If you look at the Horizon League, we're in big markets, we're in big cities. 10 of our 12 schools are in top 70 media markets. And that's something that's really unique to the Horizon League. Another point is our basketball championships. We really want to ensure that men's basketball is our primary driver from an exposure standpoint. When you flip on the NCAA tournament come March, we want a Horizon League team looking proud during that tournament. So that's something that we really want to ensure, is that we can provide that pinnacle experience from a basketball championship standpoint. And then our league has been a really innovative league. We were one of the first leagues to have a digital TV network. So before the Big Ten network, before the ACC network, the Horizon League network was the first college conference to have a TV network. So we've really tried to be an innovative league over our last 41 years. And how can we highlight our student athletes through a digital TV network? 2 years ago, we launched a podcast. We were one of the first conferences to launch a podcast. But again, it's another way that we're trying to use those vehicles to really showcase our 3,000 student athletes. We also want to be nationally competitive in Division I. What does that mean? That means that for our 19 sports, we want to ensure that those sports are competing at the highest level possible. And we've had a lot of examples of that through our 41 years of the league. And then finally, leadership. We want our student athletes to be great leaders in their community, and we want our administrators to be great leaders in their community. So that was really kind of, like I said, the exercise we took to figure out what are our differentiator points. And then how do we intertwine that with all of our external communications? So whether you go to our website, our social media, whether it's an athletic director giving an interview, or maybe it's a head coach or a student athlete giving an interview, we want to ensure that our brand platform really is kind of the driver. So we're all kind of singing from the same songbook. So whether you listen to someone at Robert Morris or at UIC or at Green Bay, when someone says, hey, Lauren, what's the Horizon League? They can answer it all in a consistent way. And really the consistent driver of that is so we can really highlight our 3,000 student athletes in a positive manner.
That's really important and really informative coming from a organization that helps guide student athletes' careers and life after that. And Jason, I want to come to you because your situation is a little different than Cam's. Talk about the success that Forward Madison FC has had in building a brand in Madison.
Well, I think there are a lot of lessons that student athletes can take from the story that we have up here in Madison, particularly student athletes who want to get into sports or at least sports marketing after college. To give you some background, Forward Madison was a startup soccer team in 2019. And that year, we led the league in attendance by over 1,000 fans per game. We basically, our merchandise sales were more than all the other teams in our league combined. It was a really big success and on a pretty small budget as well. And the way that we did that was we really honed in and focused on community. So the sort of philosophy here is, again, referring back to what I said in my opening statement, that we are a small team without the resources of a major league franchise in a lot of ways, like a lot of the programs in the Horizon League. So in the end, what we have to do is find a unique way to overcome that challenge. For us, that was having individual interactions with fans. We put a lot of time, for instance, into social media so that if someone tweets about Forward Madison and they get a reply, they'll start to think, hey, this is pretty cool. Maybe I'll buy a shirt or come to a game. But more than that, become a fan and tell someone else, hey, this verified professional sports team was talking to me on the internet. Isn't that pretty cool? So it's this brick by brick approach. One of the ways that you can use your fans as a way to grow your team. And I think that's an important lesson for anyone looking to get into the sports world. As it is.
Thank you. I appreciate that because, overall, we're talking about student athletes that have the potential to be entrepreneurs. We're also talking about student athletes having the potential to become part of the C-suite, which is the corporate side of working for major brands and organizations. Lauren, I want to come back to you on this next question. How can student athletes elevate their personal brand? I think a lot of times we look at student athletes in college and they really don't understand with the evolution of social media, it can be the devil and depending on how you use it. So when you're talking about helping a student athlete make that transition to become a professional athlete or become a professional person in corporate America, how important is it that one, it's a two-part question I'm gonna ask you. One, that they understand what they do now impacts them later. And then how can student athletes elevate their personal brand? That's the second part of the question.
Yeah, no, that's great. So obviously, like you asked, before you even elevate, I advise all student athletes, you need to go back through every single social media account from the inception, literally the day one that you started that account. Now, I understand that today, a lot of you may have started your Facebook, your Instagram when you were, in 7th, 8th grade. Yes, I'm saying go back to whenever the first time was that you posted. You need to go through every single post, anything that no longer aligns with who you are today, or anything that's on the border where you're questioning, would I want someone to see this? That needs to go away. And one of the biggest things too that I'll advise you, a lot of student athletes will say to me, well, I've put out so much content. Should I just delete my account? That's fine. You're okay to start from zero, but let me advise you, before you delete a social media account, you have to deactivate it. If all you do is delete the account, the content actually stays out on the internet. So step one, if you're going to start from ground zero, deactivate the account so that way it literally removes everything that you have, and then you can go ahead and delete, and then you can go ahead and start over. If you wait a certain amount of time, you can get that name back. So if you have, let's say you have a name on on Instagram, it does save the name for 2 weeks. So if you delete, you do have to wait 2 weeks before you can then go back and then start the new account with that same name. But I think that's step one. One of the reasons being, we've seen it all happen. Whether it's, I got a lot of press a couple years back because of a bunch of Milwaukee Brewers players that got caught for some tweets from when they were 15 years old. 15 years old. I mean, this guy's debut was ruined because someone went through and found some tweets. We all saw what happened to Dante DiVincenzo a couple years ago at the NCAA tournament. Here's the thing. Unfortunately, we live in a society where people are unhappy and they are out there to undermine other people. So you may think that you don't have that much out there, or you may not worry or think, who really cares about what I have? Whether it's all of a sudden you are playing at the highest level and you're in the national championship, or you're sitting down in front of someone who's interviewing you. I will tell you firsthand, even people at companies, there are people inside companies, just like there are at professional teams, whose job are to actually have kind of burner accounts and go through and see how much they can find about other people. So step one, go through, literally remove anything that doesn't align with who you are. If you need to start over, deactivate, then delete, and then start again. And then to elevate, the biggest thing people always ask me is, I don't even know what to post about. Take a step back, answer some of those questions I mentioned earlier, define what your pillars are. You should have 3 to 5 pillars. What are the things that you're into? What are the things that make you unique? Is it the fact that you are into working out, eating healthy, but you also really like music, and then you like to make, funny TikTok videos? Define what your thing is and then stay there. You cannot be jack of all trades, master of none. Unfortunately, it's going to get jumbled up and people are going to get confused by your brand. So the other thing is going to be consistency to elevate. I would say consistency is king. The content is queen. You have to show up on a regular, consistent basis. That is what will help you garner the right following. And then the content that you have is also going to be important. Number one thing with social media, I hate to break it to you, no one cares about you. People care about themselves. So people come to your page to get something for themselves. Maybe they're showing up for your page because they want to laugh. You have funny videos. They're showing up to your page because they want to know what it's like to live a day in the life of a student athlete. Whatever it is, when you show up to post, ask yourself, how does this add value to other people? The more you show up for other people, the more that in return, those people will keep coming back, because people are innately selfish, and the more that you just do stuff for them, the more that they will keep coming back to you.
That's really powerful, Lauren. I appreciate that, because images matter. And that's what I think a lot of people don't understand, that, you can think that it's cool because you're getting a lot of likes and clicks and that's what matters to you. But what you don't understand, when you're trying to get that scholarship or when you're trying to get that job, it's people like Cam Fuller who is sitting back, looking at your images, looking at what you put out there to determine. You could have been the best student athlete in the Horizon League. But then when they look at the character that you display, because you thought it was funny and all of your friends were telling you, hey man, you so cool, you got 10,000 likes off of that post. Now what that's getting ready to do, that's going to get you motivated, and you're going to stay down that path, and you're going to end up in a rabbit hole that you can't get out of. And then you're going to want to try to talk your way out of it when you're sitting in a job interview and they pull up this laundry list of all of those 10,000 people that you don't know, that really, to your point, Lauren, don't really care anything about you. They just care about you making a fool of yourself at that moment. So with that, Cam, coming back to the Horizon League, tell me, what distinguishes the Horizon League from other conferences? What is it that, if I'm a student athlete and I'm looking to make a decision, why should I pick the Horizon League?
Yeah, and it really goes back, Amp, to kind of our brand platform, which is who we are and who we aspire to be as a league. And we really feel like, from a differentiator standpoint, the 5 points I hit on earlier are really what differentiates us from a league standpoint. But then also, more specifically, really, what do we want to be as a league, and what do we aspire to be as a league? And obviously our commitment is for Division I competition, but we want to ensure that we're a forward-thinking league. We're always trying to push forward. We're not content just staying with status quo. And I think from our standpoint, our core value of student athlete well-being, integrity, respect, stewardship. I think people say that, but I think in the Horizon League, we prove it based on some of our values and some of our attributes that I hit on earlier. So I think from a Horizon League standpoint, you're going to play where the bright lights are. When you think about the Horizon League, the markets we're in, but with our robust partnership with ESPN, virtually all of our events are on an ESPN platform. So not only are our fans across the country going to get to see you, but your parents are going to get to see you play when you play in the Horizon League. And then from an innovation standpoint, as I hit on earlier, our league is not content just staying with status quo. So whether it's developing a television network or it's advancing our women coaches, we were one of the first conferences to activate a league-wide partnership with We Coach, which is an organization that aspires to help women coaches advance in the profession. So from our standpoint, from a league standpoint, we're always trying to push forward. And I think that goes to our student athletes as well. When you come to a Horizon League school, we hope that you have a great experience, but over your 4 or 5 years, you're going to develop both personally and professionally. So when you get to that point that Lauren had when you're sitting in a job interview, our goal is that you are a much better person than you were 4 or 5 years ago. And for those that are able to compete at the next level from an athletic standpoint, we're going to provide you that platform to shine at the national stage. So I think from that standpoint, from a value alignment standpoint, we think the Horizon League is the best league in the country, but on the flip side, it also has to make sense for the student athlete as well, right? So, I mean, I think that's the one thing. If you look at our history of our league, we've had 23 NBA players get drafted. We've had, almost 200 baseball student athletes get drafted. But if you think about it, we have 3,000 student athletes in our league. So in our 41-year history in those two sports, we've had 200 people get drafted. So that just goes to the larger point of we're trying to develop our student athletes into being great members of society when they do graduate from college, because like a lot of college athletes, there's a very small chance that you're going to be a professional athlete. So how can we give you the tools that when you graduate, you're ready to go to the world and you're ready to make a difference?
Wow, what a great answer. Jason, I want to come to you, kind of talking about branding in the community aspect as you represent an organization. What is the role of the broader community in branding a sports franchise?
Yeah, so for this question, if I can, I sort of want to take it back to what we were just talking about with Lauren with social media, because, and this may just be me speaking as someone who grew up with social media, but if you're a student athlete now, you're part of a social media generation. So I don't know about everyone who's watching this, but I grew up with those messages from Lauren, right? Of you have to watch what you're posting on social media. Employers are going to be looking at that. But I think there's a flip side to that coin as well. And it's that you have an advantage here because you are the social media generation. We know how this works and can use it to our advantage. So going into something like working with community, using social media skills that you've obtained just by growing up with social media is a great way to do that. For us, for our soccer team, a big part of it is letting our supporters have a say in what we do. So if there are big decisions that the club has to make, they get to be a part of it. For example, we had a poll to vote on the team's name, and it was all online. We also had our fans design one of our jerseys last year. A lot of that process was online. So if you've got that sort of digital savvy or that social media knowledge, you can use that to really engage with a community and bring it together. And that's been even more important during this last year. That's why everyone's sitting in a hotel room right now. It's because you can't go and talk to someone the way you normally would in person. So you can start to use these online skills. Again, if you're doing it responsibly, to talk to your fans, to really build community together. And that's something that you will definitely have the advantage on versus people who, say, got into the sports industry 20 years ago and aren't, you know, that familiar with social media. Because and I don't mean to go after the other panelists or F with this, but I think there's something to say for that as younger sort of people, we have that naturally, and that's a really important thing.
Jason, are you calling us old, man?
Right, man.
I think he's coming after us, Lauren. I don't know about this, guys.
I know you bringing up the age. I was gonna say, Amp's got a pretty good social media because I did my research, so I think people could probably learn a thing or two from him.
That's true.
Well, Jason, but you bring up a good point, because I talk, in talking to, again, I have the privilege of talking to high school kids, college athletes, professional athletes, general managers, coaches. Social media plays a major role in everybody's life today. It used to be, the younger generation. Now, when you look at social media, you have, you name it. You may not know who Dionne Warwick is, Jason, but she's in her late 70s. But she's talking, who Chance the Rapper is. She's talking to Chance the Rapper on Twitter. So what it has done, and earlier I called it the devil, and let me make sure I kind of like expound on why I say that. If it is not used, and Lauren talked about this, professional athletes have had to come out and explain something that they did in high school that they never thought they would have to talk about in the pros. And it's not that much, you got athletes that's sitting in a hotel room during the Horizon League tournament right now that's watching this, and they're sitting there bored. And that's when most people make mistakes. Idle time is the devil's worship. That's what my mother have always told me. When you can sit around as a young person without a purpose, and it kind of makes me go into my next question to Lauren, because it's sitting right in my face from the first time she signed on, guys. The first thing I saw was find solutions, not problems. Lauren, my last question to you pertaining to branding, please expound on find solutions, not problems.
It literally has become my life motto, because let me tell you, something about working with athletes and working in sports, which I'm sure all of us can agree on, is that when you work with people, especially in this industry, it hardly ever goes exactly the way that you want it to go. And so one of the best things I learned early on in my career was stop trying to force things to be perfect. And whenever something would come up, I simply would pivot. I have had to explain why very high level athletes are not showing up to an appearance. Or I've had to explain why an entire event where hundreds of thousands of people are planning to be is not going to happen next week because the athlete doesn't want to do it anymore. And so what I started to realize was, instead of having that mentality of, oh my gosh, I can't believe I have to deal with this and this is such an issue, literally wherever your mind is and wherever you're focusing things, it turns into something bigger. And so I started saying, you know what, things are going to go wrong. When you work in a people industry, things are going to come up, things are going to change last minute. And so I shifted my mindset to say, every time something comes up, how can we pivot? And then what can we learn from it? And that's literally what's gotten me this far in my career. And I think it's also the thing that's kept me in this industry, because I think one thing that, we can probably agree on is that it's hard to get into sports. That's one thing. It's just as hard to stay in it. And so I think the more that you can pivot and be fluid and flexible and go with what happens, the more that it will keep you in the game with everything.
Wow. So that comes from experience. And I tell people, life will teach you if you let it. That's what I tell young people all the time. Wisdom comes from failing. It doesn't come from winning. A lot of student athletes, once they get to a point, Cam, where they don't know what to do. And I've seen professional, and Lauren, you could probably contest to this as well. I've seen professional athletes after retirement, they're completely lost. They have no idea what to do, how to do it. And because they never prepared themselves for life after. So, finding solutions, not problems, that's when a lot of their problems start to arise because they never really knew anything but being a professional athlete. Cam, my question to you is, how are student athletes central to the Horizon League brand? Do you guys, when you're talking to different schools, is there a particular student athlete that the Horizon League likes to have that represents the league?
I mean, I think what we're most proud of from a Horizon League standpoint is we're more than just athletes. We're student athletes in the Horizon League. This year we have, as I noted, 3,000 student athletes, and 2,500 of those student athletes will make our biannual academic honor roll for a 3.2 GPA or better. So not only are our student athletes nationally competitive, they're also getting it done in the classroom. So I'm sure some of you that are watching this video right now, you might be tabbing between a paper you're writing and maybe a class you're watching virtually, and you're hanging out with us tonight, which we appreciate. But that's really, I think, from our standpoint of we want to have well-rounded student athletes in the Horizon League, because at the end of the day, those are the individuals that I think teams can thrive in when you have the continuity of a team where over 4 or 5 years that team is staying together. And you're not worrying about, an individual student athlete that may not be able to stay on the team, whether it's for academic reasons or for other reasons. So I think that's really from our standpoint. But from a brand standpoint, the student athlete is central because that's what we do. We do this job for our 3,000 student athletes. So because of that, the student athlete has to be central from our standpoint. So if you go to our social platforms at Horizon League on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook, or you go to our website, horizonleague.com, that's what you're going to see is how can we utilize those vehicles to really showcase our student athletes and to show the differences that our student athletes make, whether it's on the playing surface or maybe it's through our 1HL platform, which stands for really creating a difference in our communities, whether that was this summer with some racial and social justice, which I know that's another topic that our student athletes will have an opportunity to engage on through this video series, or it was through this November, our platform that encouraged teams to have 100% voter registration, which a lot of our teams had. So it's really about creating more than just that athlete. It's how do we create the student? How do we create that better community member? And that's really what we try to use our vehicles from a Horizon League standpoint is we love crowning 19 champions, but what we even love even more is to celebrate those stories of our student athletes doing good in their community.
And that's really important. I mean, the importance of community service, that goes a long way with branding your brand as an individual. People love to see that you are more than just an athlete. I'm so proud of LeBron James and understanding how important it is to use your platform to help others. This next question is going to be a question I want to ask each of the panelists. What advice do you have for our student athletes who want to make sports a part of their careers after graduation? I'm gonna start with you, Jason.
Well, thanks. I think if you're a student athlete right now, you have a lot of advantages if you're looking to make sports into a career, right? One of them just is the fact of being a student athlete. You know the way that sports works. You have a better understanding from someone who's not in that. You also have connections to people who know people. Use those, absolutely. Your coaches or, people who work in the athletic department that they might know people that can get you into the sports industry, and that's an advantage that you have that other people don't. And the other thing is, of course, like I was saying, that you're young, so you have sort of an innate understanding of how a lot of digital media works, of how to connect to people in a changing media landscape. So when you have advantages like this, you want to try to lean into them to say, okay, I know what I can do well. I know what I'm interested in. So I'm really going to focus on that. Again, sort of like Lauren was saying for her tips on social media, lean into what you know you're good at. And I think that's where the results will really start coming.
Thank you, Jason. Lauren, I want to ask you the exact same question. What advice do you have for our student athletes who want to make sports a part of their careers after graduation?
I think number one, you need to know that it's never linear. So no matter what the process is to get to the role that you want, it's going to look different from everyone's role and everyone's journey to get there. I think also to Jason's point earlier, talking about the fact that you have the advantage with social, you need to go outside the box. I give advice to women in my mentorship group right now who are in college looking for jobs in sports all the time. Do something different. Here's the reality. Submitting a resume onto some job is probably not going to land you the job. What can you do that sets you apart? There's a story I heard about a long time ago that I love. And it was a woman who wanted to get a job at the NFL and she wanted to work in their communications department. She took an NFL football, and she wrote her resume all over the football, sent it to the office, and it was the New York office and she lives in LA. And she said something in the letter, said something along the lines of like, my resume just went further than any NFL quarterback has ever thrown, like something really creative. She got the job. Okay. So I think figure out ways to think outside the box. And also, please know this is the long game. People look at who I work with. I'm sure, Amp, you get the same thing. It's amazing. I get to work with Terrell Owens and Jalen Smith and Jeremy Grant and Matt Carpenter. They're huge names. I didn't start there. I did not start there. And so I think it's very important when you look at people and you look at those jobs that you want, please know that it takes a lot to get there. It's the long game. And so do your job now. I always say, reach out. People ask, what can I do? We're not going to meetings. We're not meeting people. Reach out, use LinkedIn. Figure out exactly what you want. What's your dream job? Now identify 3 to 5 people who are doing that job and ask them for an informational interview. Just for 15 minutes, can I ask you some questions? And then start to build up kind of that different tribe of people that you think would be people you could eventually go to and ask for resources. And then don't be afraid to take an unpaid internship while also working a job. I sometimes have to give that advice. You're like, how am I going to break in? You might have to take an unpaid internship. Who cares if that means that you go work at a restaurant on the side on the weekend? That's how I started my agency. And 6 years later, I get to work with the amazing people that I do. Put away any notion of caring what other people think about you, because those people that you care about 10 years from now, when you're working your dream job, you're probably not even going to remember their name. I think that's one of the biggest things as you get into it too.
And that's great advice, because I too have to deal with people getting used to me next to me because of the people that I'm standing next to, and they don't understand it. I started this so many moons ago, and it just doesn't work like that. You have to, again, but it also goes back to what we talk about. Images matter. If somebody is looking to hire you, you may have all the right qualities, and then they go to your social media page. And everything about your social media page is what they identify you by. And that's what's really what a lot of young people, they don't understand that part of it. They think that, oh, you're picking on me and you won't give me a fair shot. No, you didn't give yourself a fair shot. So be careful what you put on your social media page and stop trying to be the cool person according to the people that you're standing next to, because those people will step right over you and take your position as you making mistakes. The crab in a barrel syndrome. Cam, I want to leave with you with the last question, the same question though. What advice do you have for our student athletes who want to make sports a part of their careers after graduation?
Well, I'm going to do my best to be the closer. I got a baseball here. This was a prop that I just had sitting here. So I figured since I'm last, I'm going to see if I can close this out in the 9th inning here. So
you got to use it.
I think Lauren and Jason hit the nail on the absolute head. The sports industry is the smallest industry in the world. And what I mean by that is everyone knows everyone. That is how we put this panel together, was because someone knew Lauren and someone knew Jason and someone knew Amp. And that's how it all came together, because we all work in the sports industry and we're all one connection away. And right now, for all those student athletes watching, you have 4 unbelievable resources on the screen right now. I can tell you Lauren has a website. I can tell you Amp has a website. I can tell you can find Jason's email address on his team's website, and you can find my email address on our website. The point is, reach out to people. You got to go out and do it. You got to create it for yourself, because I can guarantee you there's 25 other people that are going to apply for that job that you're looking at. that are going to be doing the exact same thing. So you really got to leverage your connections. Like Jason said, you're going to have a coach or you're going to have an administrator. I'll give you a quick example of how I got to the Horizon League. It was my senior year of college, and I was like, I want to stay in sports, but I don't know how. So I went to our assistant AD. I talked to her and she said, hey, the Horizon League has an internship. I'm like, internship? I just went to school for 4.5 years. Like, I don't need an internship, but I had to swallow my pride and I took an internship. And 8 years later, I'm still with the Horizon League. But to the group's point, you're probably going to have to take that kind of that grunt work first job. But in 10 years, Amp, to your point, you probably won't remember that. But I think the most important thing is that first job is really going to set kind of the groundwork for you as a professional. And you're going to learn a whole lot in those first couple of years. And there's still things that from my intern year at the Horizon League that I still use today because I was able to experience maybe what some of our colleagues are going through right now because I did it, a while ago, but I can still relate to them. So the point is, don't blow off those internships either, because really what that is every day you're on a job interview. And I always tell people, not only that, but volunteer, get out and do things. And it's hard right now with COVID, but when you volunteer for an event or you work game operations, maybe for the athletics department, every day is a job interview. When you go up and you tie your shoes and you walk in, if you don't bring 100% in that, maybe that job that you just applied for, there's probably a good chance that there's going to be a connection point there. And they may say, you know what, this person, they showed up 20 minutes late, they didn't work hard. And you were thinking, it's just a minimum wage, entry level job. That's going to be what sets your foundation for your future. So I think use your connections and make sure when you do get those jobs or those internships, treat them like it's a job interview.
Great advice. Great advice. This has been an amazing time with all of this wealth of knowledge. And I know the student athletes that are sitting in the hotel rooms watching this, hopefully you took something from it. I mean, the four of us here, we've already started our path. The next thing is up to you. And Cam just said it. You have four people that are willing to help. Now it's up to you. So we want to make sure that these student athletes have an opportunity, since Jason wants to assume that we are all too old, Cam, to have social media platforms. I want to give the panelists the opportunity to give out your social media handles. Jason, starting with you, since you're the youngest on the panel.
So if you want to check out my work with Forward Madison, we're on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. If you just search Forward Madison, you'll find us there. If you want to get into touch with me, the best way to do it is probably email, honestly. So it's just jason@forwardmadisonfc.com.
Well, how about that, Cam and Lauren? After all of that, Jason doesn't have a social media platform.
I do enough social media in my daily work, so.
I'm just messing with you. Lauren, give them your social media handles.
You can find our company. It's at LW Branding on all platforms. You can find my personal page through there. And then website, lwbranding.com. My email is lauren@lwbranding.com. And any women that are listening, I'd love to have you in my free mentorship program that I have as well.
Now, that's something that we really didn't get a chance to really touch on, because that's super important, especially in this day and age. Women having self-confidence, and for all of our young student athletes. I'm gonna touch on that before we sign off, but I want to make sure Cam gives out all of his social media information.
Yeah, you can. Hopefully you've already connected with the Horizon League as a student athlete, but at Horizon League is our social handles on all platforms. And then horizonleague.com. We also have a podcast at Reach of the Horizon podcast, which you can find on our website or on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And then from a personal standpoint, you can find me on Twitter, cfuller_HL, and certainly connect with me on LinkedIn. Would love to hear from you all. And then my email address is cfuller@horizonleague.org. So just appreciate everyone listening in and look forward to hopefully hearing from you all, but certainly look forward to watching you all compete this season.
Thank you, Cam. And mine is really simple. AMP, A-M-P, Harris, Harris, everywhere. So it's really simple. No one has a name like AMP Harris, so it was easy for me to get that on every social media platform. But But I really want to say thank you to the Horizon League for doing something like this, because I think it is so needed, because a lot of young people do not understand how important images are, how important branding yourself is, and most importantly, how important to love yourself and have self-confidence. You know, Lauren talking about, mentoring young women. I think a lot of our young people, especially student athletes, you know, college is like a safe haven for a lot of student athletes. You know, I know a lot of black and brown students that come from areas of where I come from, and this is a way for them to get away from some of the things that they endure and had to deal with every day in life. So make sure you take advantage of the Horizon League and what they have to offer. Make sure you look yourself in the mirror every day, because if you have zero self-confidence in yourself, you can't sell yourself to anyone. You can pretend, and that's what a lot of social media is. It is a big box of pretending. And after that, then what? So hopefully, again, you take a lot of this advice that the panelists have given you tonight, apply it. Good luck to all of the teams, all the student athletes that are competing in the Horizon League tournament right now. And congratulations to everybody that stayed with us throughout this, because that lets me know that you really care about your future. Those that felt like this wasn't important for them because they would much rather be sitting in front of the TV and playing with their thumbs on the little games, come and speak to us like 3 years after you graduate from college. If you graduate from college, that's tough information, tough knowledge, but the world is going to be tougher. Thank you guys for having us. Thank you for the Horizon League for hosting this wonderful, wonderful discussion about building your brand. On behalf of the Horizon League, my name is Amp Harris. Thank you for having us. Goodbye.